Alright everyone, it's time to talk about a little bit of an exception to my libertarian leanings. Not really an exception so much as a qualification. If people are going to do as they wish, there's no victim to what you're doing, except maybe yourself, so it's okay. You have to use reason and logic to govern your actions. This gets into the sort of might is right, almost satanic perspective on it. That is that libertarianism in and of itself, the concept, especially on the ANCAP side of simply, we limited government, people can do as they wish. In and of itself, it works. We've seen this, of course, for the first 100 years of American history, more or less. We did have essentially a monarchist society. It did work, although it begins to break down in the Gilded Age because, of course, things weren't 100% properly constrained. We should have had more constraints on government and even business power at the time. But it only works if the population appreciates freedom and won't voluntarily give it up, number one. Number two, it works best, that is, its efficiency. It's not like other systems in which efficiency can be increased just by the academic or technological potential. It also gets a boost in its efficiency by people making reasonable decisions. That is, the hope is that within any given society that's free, the majority of people make sane, rational decisions most of the time, and so order is maintained in a voluntary sense. How then do you combat people who make insane and irrational decisions? And this is the problem with our society today, is that most people are limited in their ability to think freely. That is, they're technically free. They're free in action. But they're not free in thought. They've been fooled by propaganda. Breaking the spine of propaganda that impedes our culture is number one in the way in which, really, those of us who support monarchism and ANCAP ideology can really benefit society. Can't do that just by pushing, oh, we're going to vote for the Libertarian Party. Well, what does that mean? It's not going to accomplish anything. Saying, oh, Ron Paul is good. Okay, meme-worthy, may be true, but most people will not have an appreciation for what's being said anyway. They're too easily fooled by propaganda. If you wish to overhaul an authoritarian society and bring it back to a limited government, pro-freedom position, you have to first tackle propaganda. That means you need to wipe out the MSM. They need to be severed from having any specific power to manipulate the masses. The rise of the alt-media and the internet is what's doing this. That's why libertarianism is growing. That's why other ideologies outside of neoliberal/neocon, which are basically the same thing, that's why they're growing right now. It's also why the big tech firms in partnership with especially the European censorship-happy totalitarian governments are trying to dumb down the internet right now. By the way, all the censorship we see in big tech is sponsored by DC. Yeah, of course it was. It's just a way for them to try to work around the First Amendment by amalgamating people on a handful of platforms where they're doing most of their free speech, having most of their Fourth Amendment rights, and then dismantling it systematically. I believe alt-tech will undo this damage, but it'll take some time. It'll take some years to actually do so. The next generation of technology may permanently fix this problem. We can be hopeful that it will happen. We need to support and shelter such groups and support them any way we can in order for that to happen. A lack of action will lead to a disastrous end result in which it doesn't really matter if the content is decentralized. It'll still end up censored over time. It's just the way that things work. But here's the thing. If we want to look at insane and irrational behavior, we need to look no further than the behavior of many people in society. For instance, I use the example. You can wander around in a lightning storm holding a metal rod over your head. You can slap a bunch of raw steaks around your neck and go wander into a bear den. You can do all sorts. You can go to Portugal and you can develop a heroin addiction. You can start smoking. Are these good ideas or are they bad ideas? For instance, you can say, well, I hate police and be, a belligerent person in general. There's no law against it. But is it a good idea? Yeah, maybe next time you get robbed, it takes a little bit longer for them to arrive or something. You can wear blue and wander through the Bloods-controlled back alley. You can wear red and go to the Crips headquarters. It's legal. There's no law against it. Do you think you'll survive the encounter? At least with all of your teeth and bones unbroken? Yeah, probably not. Not the greatest idea in the world. And so a lot of people simply lack strategic thinking, or they lack, logic. There are people who have an appreciation for freedom, but they don't have an appreciation for the responsibilities attendant being free. Namely, if you don't want someone else to have a cause to abuse you, you have to govern yourself. You have to be your own lord. And in order to do that, you need at least generally a rational mind. It can't be cluttered up with bullshit propaganda, whether it's from a state, a corporation, a church. You have to get rid of all that. This is why I've told people to use Satanism as a springboard to other things. Even if you go back, it's not a matter of, I want to get people to leave like the Christian church or something. Go ahead and be a Christian, but cleanse your mind of all the filth and propaganda first, and you'll live a better life. You'll be more rational. And it's beneficial to me too when I tell people to do this. It's not just for their own benefit. It'll benefit them. But if society raises its consciousness more and has more of a mind to reason, behaving in ways that are sane, that make sense, doing things that are sensible, then society functions at a higher efficiency. There's less of a cause at any given time for tyrants to come along and tell the stupefied masses, the government needs more power. Some group needs more power to prevent problems. It won't work. Because, you see, here's how you know that they're mind numb. They think that government censorship can save them from their problems. They think that another tax will save them from some problem. That's delusional. It's never worked that way. It never will work. It's nonsense. And that's the result of a society that has a sickness of the mind more than anything else. It's not a society where it's like criminality. People aren't genetically predisposed generally, unless they've, their genetic structure just makes them violent in general. Okay, they got some severe problem. Generally speaking, if someone's engaging in criminal activity, it's situational. It's the result of something cultural, some situation in the life around them. If you teach them critical thinking and you teach them to govern their actions, typically this won't become a problem as often. People will be less given over to violence, because they'll be too busy debating points. They won't be given over to seeking after wanton materialism so much, because their enjoyments will be generally more easily obtained. They'll be more simplistic, having a cup of tea or something. People should be free to make stupid decisions, but they shouldn't be encouraged to make stupid decisions. Right now we have a culture where the MSM and the government encourage people to be dumb. They really do. The educational structure that we have in place encourages people to be mindless slaves. It encourages them to be workaday individuals. It doesn't encourage critical thinking. People have to learn that on their own. It's very difficult, unless they're seeking it actively. But in order to seek it actively, they already have to have an open mind. Most people, by the time they're out of high school, most people's minds are irreparably damaged. That is, it would be very, very difficult to repair their mind of the damage that's been done by propaganda. By the time they're still a young adult. They're not even old enough to drink yet. They've already been scarred for life by all of the bullshit that's been pumped into them. By the educational structure, governments, media, certainly, advertising firms, businesses. Now, religion. Religions used to be the main culprit. Now it's media now. Yeah, it's not even religion anymore. Religion's no longer the main problem in the world. For the first time in thousands of years of human history, religion isn't the big daddy of abuse. It's political systems and their propaganda outlets, aka media. And all media, old guard media anyway, is directed by or co-opted by government. They have a very clear line that they push, which is basically shut up, slave. We'll tell you what you should believe in. It's basically what they do. They do this. During the election, CNN did this explicitly. People should listen to us. We should be the ones giving them their view of reality. Not some blogger, not some YouTube celebrity. You're going to give them a really wonderful reality, one that conforms to your consensus view at CNN, that you as millionaires are noble people, and that the establishment is sacrosanct and wonderful. You see how it works? And people actually gobbled it down. Some people believe this. Thankfully, fewer and fewer people. People are getting away from the propaganda now, which gives me hope. But we need to keep up the direction. Right now, I fear that the pro-liberty movement has a powerful engine, but no steering wheel, essentially. And so we're just sort of being tilted around helter-skelter, on the winds of chance and or by the will of, again, propaganda that is declining in power, but it urges us in one direction or the other to try to abuse us. People need to keep this in mind, that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Like, you can show up and protest the removal of a statue by waving torches around and shouting Nazi slogans if you want to. Is this a good idea? Are people receptive to that message generally? No, they're not receptive to it. You can throw your piss at the police because you're an anarcho-communist. You know, you can join Antifa and throw piss bottles at the police. Is this a good idea, or does it make the whole organization look dumb? It makes them look dumb. You can go on the internet and just be totally nasty to people, but does that make them receptive to what you're saying? No, if you're trying to convince people that are supposedly part of another group, you've got to not be a total asshole while doing it, by the way. If you're an asshole to people, most of them won't be receptive. Simply challenging someone on their views is fine. Intelligent debate works better than just saying, oh, you're stupid. How can you not see my self-evident objective claims of reality, or something like that? You can act like that. You're not going to change anyone's mind. Any third party looking at that thinks that you're dumb, and by default, because they've got a screwed up dichotomous mind, they think the other person's argument's automatically smarter because they're comparing it with yours. That's what happens. So basically, the only moderating factor keeping fringe groups in line right now, because they're regressing into echo chambers. The whole tech world seems fixated on this idea of, oh, stamp out people we don't believe. We'll stamp out people we don't like. It's not going to work. Censorship is the dumbest idea that was ever invented by mankind. We're going to start throwing people in a, we're going to kill you for your beliefs became we're going to throw you in a cell for your beliefs. And that became we're going to give you electroshock therapy for your beliefs. And now it's we're going to make you lose your job for your beliefs. But it's still the same principle. It's still the same dumbassery that never worked before. People are just, they don't understand history. They're never going to get it or anything. It's just sort of the way that it works. So I would say govern your life with freedom. You should be able to do the things you want to do if there's no victim. But it's like, think of it this way. And we have to deal with this right now. We've got a drug war going on. It's unconstitutional. It's a shitty idea. It doesn't work. And it shouldn't be there. But it is. Legally speaking, it's still there. We have to deal with that fact. So, you're not creating a victim if you're smoking weed. The only potential victim is you, and it's not exactly clear that it's going to hurt you. Just keep that on the down low, just ignore all the people that have tried or used marijuana regularly. It's probably not going to hurt you, unless it's laced. Yeah, you shouldn't be smoking like PCP-laced weed or something. It's just not a good idea. You probably end up foaming at the mouth and throwing yourself off a cliff. So you can, physically, you can obtain it, and you can determine that it's okay to do that. But it's still illegal in most parts of the country and in the world. So you have to take that risk. Weigh the reasoning of the situation. Look at the logic of the situation. Govern your actions accordingly. In some cases, resisting tyranny boils down to not getting caught doing so. I'll tell you that much. Disclaimer, I'm not encouraging you to break any laws. The drug war, that can be taken care of, honestly, through petitions and voter initiative. It's going the way of the dinosaur. It's dying off. There are other forms of abuse, though, too. There are plenty of non-violent ways to protest things, as they are, and they should all be geared towards pro-liberty. It's like, God, I think it was 2 years ago. Remember on Texas, they had the open carry protests where a bunch of people were carrying dildos around. And there was like, oh, no guns, guns are shitty, and we should worry about reproductive rights, not guns. Why don't you prop up both? Why don't you just become pro-liberty? Your reproductive rights I fully support. I also support their right to carry guns around. Why can't you have both? Why is it an either-or situation? So often these little groups are actually, they're basically a walking wedge issue that's been mobilized by some media firm or some politician for their own benefit. It happens all the time. They seek to keep people outside of togetherness. They seek to crack them apart to control them for money, for power, votes, which is money and power, essentially. They do this all the time. You've got to learn how to resist such things. It's quite simple. Ask yourself who's benefiting from any sort of line the MSM is spitting out, or any proposal that a politician's making. That's usually the best way to figure out what's really going on in the world. And I've got a very derpy cat here. Yeah. I think he wants me to end the video, actually. I think he's saying, okay, you've been long-winded enough, it's time to pet me. So, that's about all. Kitty out. Oh.